Take like 10. Okay. Hi, my name is Amanda. Um, if you don't know, I am a human trafficking survivor. I have autism, late diagnosed, so far self diagnosed, um, CPTSD, and ADHD. I have one hell of a story, and it's many of them, and I would really love to share it with you guys. And whoever watches and watches all the way through, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Um, my autism makes it very hard for me to be able to find the correct words for things to be able to make this content. So the content that I do make is very hard for me to put together and make. So your support really means a lot. Thank you. Um, okay, so today I want to talk about when I was with my daughter's biological father. I was young, and this is the story of when I got off uh, on self-defense. And if my son wouldn't have been able to say those few words that he did that day, I might be in prison. Um, okay, here's the beginning. I had lost my dad. I was 19 years old, and I had a 6-month old, 7-month old son, somewhere around there. And my son's cousin's girlfriend, who had told me that she had a friend that was single and he had a good job and he was a good guy, and that she thinks that him and I would really get along. Okay, well, I was really hesitant and I blew it off a couple of times. Finally, I accepted, and I met him over at her house because it was safer, for me. Um, and I had my son. I was a single mom, so I didn't really have much choices. But anyways, so um, we met and we hit it off. Like, he was just the perfect gentleman. He was so sweet, so kind. He was also a Scorpio, just like me. And yes, he had a good job. He did tile work on the big motels. And, in my eyes as a young single mom, he looked like the perfect person that could help me take care of my son, that could help take care of me, that could be a provider. And, because that's the way I was raised. I was raised by a mother who was born in 1950, if that tells you anything. So that was my mindset for a long time. If you listen to my past story, you'll realize that I was born to be a housewife. Literally, that's what they put me here for. But anyways, um, so we clicked, we hit it off, and it wasn't long until he started showing his anger, his jealousy, just the whole 9 yards when it comes to emotional wreckage. um, he he always wanted to fight, always wanted to argue, and of course, I was young. I fought and argued right back. Um, and when I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter a couple of years after we got together, uh, that's when he started to get way worse. Um, I tried to leave a few times, and I tried to go to my mom's house. When I left, I would always try to go to my mom's because that was the only place I had. Uh, he would always show up and stay in the street, and the cops wouldn't do anything. He would be out there. Sometimes he would have guns, he would have baseball bats, he would have, he would be revving up his truck, he would just laying on the horn all night long. It was bad. It was really bad. And I would always give up. I would always be like, okay, my mom can't take this. I can't take this. Like, my son's not even sleeping. I'm just going to go back. So I would go back. And at this point, he had not gotten physical with me. I was around 7 months pregnant with my daughter, and we were living in a camper in a little RV park. And you know those old, humongous DVD VCR combos? Well, during one of our arguments, he picked it up and he threw it at me. I was huge when I was pregnant. I'm tiny. I was very large, and I wasn't able to move fast enough. And he hit me in the stomach, in the lower part of my stomach, with the device. And my daughter was okay. Thank God. She's a resilient little thing. But I got my son and I left again. And I went back to my mama's. And I really cannot remember how we ended up back together again. But, and I'm being honest when I say that, I have so many blank spots. I really do. But I let him convince me that he didn't purposely hit me with the DVD VCR combo. Okay, for anyone listening, never ever accept that. Okay, on purpose, it doesn't matter. Okay, even if you are able to justify what they did for some reason in your head, the fact is that they did it, you were in the vicinity, so therefore there was a possibility that you could have been hurt, and they knew that. Okay? Never accept it was an accident. So fast forward. I was so depressed. But I was trying to be the best mom that I could be, and housewife, even though we weren't married. Housewife that I could be. And I did everything. I cooked, I cleaned, my house was completely spotless. Like, literally, my children could put their food on the floor and eat it any given time of the day, and I did not have to worry because I knew that I had just cleaned that spot. I stayed busy. I timed everything to where it was around his schedule. And I didn't smoke cigarettes, I didn't drink, I did no drugs, no marijuana at the time, nothing. And I used to time dinner perfectly. I timed it to where it would be just getting done as he would be coming in the door from work. That way it would be perfectly hot and wouldn't have to be reheated, because I don't like things that are reheated sometimes, you know. Yeah. Well, he walked straight into the room, and the kids were playing in the kitchen floor while I was cooking. I was making hamburgers that day. And he Went in there to do what he normally does. He goes straight for his weed. Uh, and he was out. I didn't know that. I didn't smoke. And so he come out and he started screaming and yelling at me. And I told him, he was like, no, he said, "You're going to go get me some weed." And I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "I'm not risking that. That's illegal," because we were living in Texas. It was highly illegal. And I told him, I was like, "I'm not risking that. I have 2 little kids right here that they need me. I can't do that. Like, if you want it, you go get it." And I gave him my car keys. Okay? Because it was my car that we used. And, he said, "Well, they're not my people, they're your people." Well, yeah, they used to be my people, okay? But that was a long time ago, you know? And so I handed him my phone and I was like, "Well, you know them, so here, you call them. Like, the number's in there, just call them." And so he throws my phone and he starts screaming at me, okay? So the whole time that we were arguing, I was making hamburgers, alright? And I was using a cast iron skillet with a metal spatula. And, sorry, my cat's rubbing up against the box I have my phone on, so it's moving my phone, I'm sorry. And so the whole time that we were arguing, I had this metal spatula sitting underneath this hamburger patty in this cast iron skillet with all this grease. When he started showing his signs again, before I'd walked away from the skillet, and he was screaming and yelling and throwing things and hitting things, I had turned the burner on high. So I walked back over to the skillet after he threw my phone, and I stood there and I waited. And he did exactly what I thought he would do. He came over to me and he pinned me in between him, the stove, and the counter. The counter was behind me and the stove was beside me. Okay, my kitchen was like this. Here's the counter, here's the stove. My back was to this counter. And so when he balled up his fist and he hit me like I was a grown man, I didn't even put my hands on him first. When he balled up his fist and he hit me, I reached over and I grabbed the handle of that spatula and I just swung. I'm short. I'm 4'11", and so I was aiming for his entire throat. I'm not gonna lie, I was aiming for his whole throat, but I didn't get his entire throat. I got half of his throat and then half of his shoulder. Like, it just went over, but it was so hot that it sliced through his skin like butter. So after that, I grabbed my babies out of the floor, like adrenaline just rushing. And I grabbed my car keys off the kitchen island and I ran out the back door and I put my babies in the car. And I told my son, I gave the keys to my son and I told my son, I said, "Here," I said, "I have to run inside and get my wallet. My car is on E, I need gas." I said, "Lock the car and don't let anybody in. Keep sister safe." And because, like, he was so protective of his little sister. And so I ran back inside the house, and at this point he had woken up. It turned into a knockdown drag out, and I literally had to fight my way back out that door. But I was not staying. Not after that man put his hands on me in front of my babies. It was not going to happen again. And at this point, I had been going to counseling every week. I told him that I was doing volunteer work or something in Athens, Texas, but I was going to a place that's called East Texas Crisis Center for Women. And I drove to my mama's, and the next morning, first thing in the morning, I drove up to that East Texas Crisis Center with my babies, scared to death. I was scared. I didn't want to lose my babies because I was being abused, you know? And so I took them up there, and I had the black eye. And my fingers were broke. And I told them what had happened. They told me that I had two choices. I could go back and I could lose my kids, or I could let them help me. And I told them, I said, well, what do you think I'm here for? So they told me that what they're going to do is they're going to send CPS to my house with the police. They found out, they asked what time he got home from work, usually. And they said that they want me to contact him and tell him that I'm sorry, I'm coming home. And they want me to go there during the day while he's at work and act like everything's normal. Well, they showed up with the police about 5 minutes after he got there from work. CPS did. And they knocked at the door, and they had a caseworker go into the house and sit with the kids. And they called me and him out onto the porch. And the caseworker looked at me in front of the children, or in front of my daughter's dad, and said, okay, it's him or your kids. And I looked at him and said, well, you know, that's never been a choice. My babies come first always. And then the caseworker and the officer, the other caseworker and the officer looked at him and said, okay, what's going to happen is we're going to put a restraining order on you, and we're going to take Miss Cooper and her children out of here. And you're not going to contact them. It's been very few times in my life that the police have been there to actually help me and not torture me. And that was one of those times. It was in Seven Points, Texas, that they helped me get away from that abuse. And well, 7 Points and Athens helped me. So that's my story on how I got off on self-defense for attacking my baby daddy right back when he hit me. So this is my message to anyone that is in an abusive relationship. Okay? If you see the red flags and it's just emotional right now, then get out. Get out. If they're not listening to you, if you feel like you are screaming at a brick wall, begging for change, if you feel like you are just doing it all by yourself and they are just making you feel worthless, get out. before you get hurt. And if you are in a situation where you are being hurt, still, you need to get out yesterday. Like, you need to get your children, if you have children, and you need to get out, male or female. That's my advice. It's pretty simple. Okay. I stayed because I didn't think I could do it on my own. I stayed because he made good money and I knew that there was no way I could keep up that lifestyle. Just me. With 2 little kids, it was impossible. But I'm going to tell you this much. My son telling that officer he hit my mommy and crying and shaking when he said it, that's all it took. I swore my son would not see that again. Or my daughter. So get out. Thank you for listening.